Hi everyone and welcome to this week's show where I'm giving an art giveaway. And this is to celebrate getting 500 subscribers on the channel, and I know that is very small, but for me I think I'm just absolutely amazed. I really do appreciate everybody who has subscribed and supported me on this journey as I just share my love of my art, and particularly portrait art, with fellow artists and art lovers. So thank you very much. Look, if you haven't been here before, my name's Michael. I am a professional portrait artist in Perth, Western Australia. And as I said, I just started making these videos just to show and just to share my, passion for art. I guess like all artists, we love to share what we do, especially with other artists and art lovers. So what I thought I'd do for the celebration is just give away a painting. Do a painting together over the next couple of weeks. A really nice, simple, figurative painting, and I'll show you this one now. I've actually sketched him up. By the way, when I mean giving it away, I'll give it away to one of the subscribers. I'll frame it first before I send it out, and I'll pay the postage. Don't worry about that. I don't like those people who go, you just pay for postage and you get it for free. Well, it's kind of not free, is it? So don't worry about that. I'll post it to you. So what I've done, it's just a 12 by 16 stretch canvas. That's one of the little blocks I just put on the back just so it can hang on my wall easel here. I've actually taken a photograph of this, and you'll be able to just download that if you want from my website. I'll just hang it up there. So I've just got the figure, and I just wanted to do, I love doing quiet moments, observing life. And this reminded me of a scene that I actually saw. It was just an old gentleman sitting, I don't know if it's exactly like this, it's just from memory, but an old gentleman just sitting on a stone bench against a wall, a couple of doors here. We've got some paving we're going to paint down here. I've actually sketched in some patterns in here just to show that the walls are going to be mottled, basically just representing, the life you've traveled, all the bumps and the bumps and the different colors that we're going to put in here. Also what I've done is I pre-mixed the colors for the back wall, just for the back wall only, and because I'm using a smaller palette. I'm actually using my plein air palette this time because the main palette is set up for a commission portrait I'm doing. I'm doing a commission portrait for a celebration for a family. They want it kept private, so you won't be seeing that, unfortunately, but you've got to respect the clients. So why don't I show you what I've mixed on the palette, and then we can start to paint. So let's go across and have a look at the palette. So what I've done here is I've just mixed out this green color, and this is just burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and my yellow, bismuth yellow. God, getting a memory blank then. Oh, my old colours. Oh, by the way, my palette is only ever made up of for these paintings, titanium white, ultramarine blue, burnt umber, alizarin crimson I'm using, and bismuth yellow, which is a Winsor & Newton. I use Winsor & Newton colours all the time. So what I'm just showing you is I've just pre-mixed. So we've got a lot of different values. This is going to give us a nice range of shades. That's all values are, just going from dark to light. Now I want to put some different colours in. So this then is a burnt umber, alizarin crimson, a little bit of bismuth yellow in there, and a little tiny bit of the blue as well. But you see, I've tried to match the values across here, and I'll explain that in a moment, and then just done a range of values just going along. So we've got a few. What it means, if I put this value on the panel next to this value, it'll blend very nicely without actually blending it. The eyes will fix it. And I've done the same with the blue. This is a blue-green, so this is ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt umber to take it into the grey, more grey blue. Well, a grey is blue, but put a burnt umber just to kill the ultramarine. And a little bit of bismuth yellow in there as well, and then titanium white, obviously I'm using just to lighten it. What happens in portraits, if you can get this, so different colours but the same values, the same lightness or darkness, and you put them next to each other, say on a forehead or on someone's cheek, it really creates magic in the portrait. It's just amazing what it can do. And it really opens up your scope to make the portraits really interesting. What is amazing is when you do it, people actually don't see the colour. They don't say, oh, you've put blue on that face. They actually don't do that. it just seems, the face just seems more alive to them. So this is one of the things we're going to do. So this is our palette we are going to be using. So there's our palette. Here's our panel. As I say, I'm putting a link in the description where you can just click. You don't need your email or anything. Just click that and it should be able to download a photograph. I just took a photograph of this, and you can just trace this out yourself and draw it on a panel, and we can paint it together and talk about painting together. Let's do that. So roll the intro.
Here we are on the palette. I'm going to start with the darks, as I usually do as we go across in. I'll just pop up in that right-hand corner just so you can see where we're going to go to on this particular session. Just nice and quick. We don't need to linger on it too often. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this up as I go along. I sketch this just out of my mind, just thinking about a scene I'd seen. So it's probably not exactly what I saw, but, I just saw an old man sitting against a wall contemplating life. So I've angled his head down. You'll get to that when we paint the figure in. Clasped his hands in front of him. Now, if I want him enjoying the scenery, we'd sitting back a little bit, lift his chin up a little bit, unclasp his hands, maybe put them on his knees, and that's an imagery we can get. But I think I really enjoy doing these very quiet, simple scenes because they can speak volumes, even though they're so quiet. And you do that by the value shifts. And I know I carry on about this all the time, don't I? But this is what we're going to do. We're actually going to create a really interesting wall pattern, and you can paint along, and it doesn't matter if you're not using the same colors as me. Use whatever colors you prefer that you might like to go with your decor. The pictures, I say, is ready for you to download. I've loaded that up to my website, and it doesn't take your email, nothing silly like that. Just click that link and it should just open the download file for you just to grab it, and then you can just copy it. Look, I just sketched it straight onto here, so it's a photograph of what you're actually looking at. It's not a nicely architectural drafted thing, guys. So having said that, so download that, do the sketch, start the video, let's paint along, let's have some fun. This particular part that we'll get to will probably, I think it takes about an hour, 20 minutes. So this is probably between, if I was just doing this flat out, it's probably a 2.5, 3 hour painting session. So a good morning painting session, a nice painting just to do for the morning. So nothing too onerous. It's going to go a little bit slower, because I'm making it up. My brain's trying to work it out at the same time. It doesn't actually know where it's going. It's just trying to think. Even though I've done the sketch now, I'm trying to think of where these darks would go. And you'll notice one of the keys of actually really making a painting talk to people is having lots of darks, taking your time, and don't rush from the darks into your midtones. This is really key. And look, this is something I struggled with as well in the early days. I was so impatient, let me just get on, let me make it look. It doesn't work that way. It's much better to take your time with these darks. And remember, it's easier to paint light over dark. So I don't have to stress too much, And having said that, when we paint this, what I'm going to say is when we get to the end of today, I'm sure you're going to be looking at mine and you're going to be looking at yours and think, oh, I could do that. This could need that. That looks a bit funny there. Don't try and correct it then. That's the worst thing you can do, because we're going to have some brownie reds in here, for lack of a better word. There's a technical color term for you, a brownie red. But the reason being is because these doors on the right that you can see, they're wooden doors. So they're going to be the red, the dark brownie red wooden doors, put some black door handles on there as well. So that red is going to get picked up by the red in the wall. As I always say, as you build a picture, it starts to shift and change. It is quite incredible. You'll paint a background like this. This is a really good exercise to do. And then you'll paint the doors in, and you think, oh, it looks different. You'll paint the front cobbled pavings in, and then you'll put the figure in, and all of a sudden, what you thought were errors originally just seem to melt away. Now, you're always going to see things that someone viewing it doesn't see, but that's my advice. Don't do any changes until the whole canvas is completely covered. And look, that is probably the advice you'll hear from most professional painters. They won't touch anything until they've got everything covered, because that gives them a better perspective of what they're looking at. So we're just working our darks, and I'm using a number 3 filbert here. We'll start this pillar going down the side of the door. I put a pillar here just to give it an actual physical break. I didn't want to put a barrier between the man, and the edge, and I don't want a pillar on the edge. It's a bit too cliche, putting the pillar on the edge of the wall. Stop the eyes falling off. The actual color red will stop the eyes falling off, and it will flick straight back to the man. So we don't have to get too concerned. But a nice bit of pillar gives some context that door is actually set into the wall. That's why we're doing that there. And you see, I'm just slowly going to make my way through these colors. Now, my palette that I decided on for this was, I went for a greeny color. So it's a bluey green color that I've actually got going on. So basically, on my palette, as I've said before, I've got the titanium white, burnt umber, ultramarine blue. This one's got alizarin crimson sitting on the palette. And then we've got Vismuse yellow, and that's it. That's basically what I've got. So what I did, I just took my ultramarine blue and my yellow and made a green, and then I added red to it. And that gave me my olivey green, and that's how I got it darker. I did put a little bit of brown in there as well. I tend to talk in colors is really just simple colors. And and that's how I got. So I made this bluey green up with a bit of red in there to give it that real olivey look. And then I thought, well, the doors, I want to have red doors. So if I was having blue doors, I'd probably do more blue highlights, but I went to red doors, an old wooden red door, because it's wood. And so I went, well, I want some red into the wall. So that's why I started mixing up the red. So you can see, because I put the reds into my greens and got them olivey, when I put the reds next to them, everything starts to have that color harmony. And then I've got blue, as I said, into those greens as well. So I've got the bluey greens. So I chose the blue to go with it on that right-hand side. Now, really starting to just break the picture up. I have no idea if it's going to work. That's part of the fun of painting. I think too many times we challenge ourselves with, is it going to look good? Is it going to be this? Just don't worry about it. You just paint what you want. What is going to happen on this story? It's going to really free you up on just painting this very free style, and knowing and getting the experience of just putting broken colors. So we've got the greens, we're going to put some browny reds in there, we'll put some blues and other bits and pieces in there, but just breaking up the color. And the other thing it's going to start looking at is how little detail we actually need in our main subject. I mean, it's not the wall. The main subject is the man. And when we get there, you'll be amazed at actually how little detail there is in him. I've looked at paintings by Velasquez and Ripon. Ripon's got, I think it's the soul of, and I was talking to someone else online about this, the soul of Russia, and the leg doesn't even connect to the foot. You can actually, if you start looking at it, you say, hold on, the leg's not kidding. But when you stand back and just look, the whole thing works. So what they're doing is just the value shifts. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to have some real fun with this and paint it in. So this is a slow bit. So if someone says, what's the greatest skill of painting? Well, patience. Taking one piece at a time. This is a number 3 filbert. I think I said that. And I'm just slowly working my way through. It does speed up as we start to get to the lighter colors, but these darks, because I know they're so important to create the atmosphere, you see I'm not moving, but I do, and that's how there's a great example of me taking 2 values and mixing to get a third value. I'm not changing this brush because I want it loaded with these different colors, because that's going to give me some interesting variations on the actual palette here. So I'll wipe it off on paper towel to get the most of the excess off, but I'm not really too concerned about anything at this stage. I'm just flicking the edge of the canvas there. So when I put it in the floater frame for when I send it to somebody, because I am giving this one away, as I said, the edge will just look nice when it's in the floater frame. Don't have to go too far around, but when you stretch canvas on the frames, you just get that bit of a curve on the edge. So that's all I'm doing there. And very, very slowly, just filling in this. That was the underside of the bench. And you'll notice I do bounce around the canvas a little bit because I do feel like if you stay in one spot for too long, and even I catch myself doing this, your painting will start to lack life because you'll start to push a value too far, or you'll start to cover too much area with it when you should have stopped or maybe changed the direction of the brushstroke. So I guess in a way you're losing the abstraction that you really were chasing for in the first place. So that what's going to really make a realistic painting work is abstraction in your brushstrokes and the breakup of all the values, not necessarily the colors, but definitely the breakup of the values. I'm doing this in between a commission. I've got a commission to a couple. They both turned 70 this year, and they want to commission a portrait. It's going to be 76 centimeter by 76 centimeter, quite nice and substantial. And of the two of them for their wedding anniversary. But of course, a lot of my private clients, they're exactly that. They're private. They don't want their faces plastered all over the internet. So that's why I don't show those paintings. And I've always got it when I'm there. And we have some paperwork we fill in, where I'm just describing what I'm actually going to do for them. And on that paperwork, I'll actually have a specific part on there that I always talk to them about. I always say, look, I do have a YouTube channel, I've got my website, I've got Facebook, is it okay to put your painting on there, any progress? And of course, I always then say, most of my private clients don't like that. So that's fine. Just say no, and we'll just put no in the box there, and that is done. And the reason I do it that way is because I don't want them to feel awkward. I don't want them to feel, oh, I wish he wouldn't, but they feel guilty about saying no. So I give them the permission straight away. I actually tell them what most of my private clients, and it's true, most of my private clients don't want their paintings. When I'm doing the family, especially done some large family portraits, that they don't want themselves all over my social media. And that's fair enough. So that does become a challenge for a portrait artist trying to show their work off when you've got, maybe 50, 60% of your clients that you're doing work for not wanting you to display it anywhere. It's for their private ownership. They've gone to acquire this piece and it's for them. So that is a challenge if people say, well, how do you market yourself? So that is something there. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. So I just thought I'd just take a break in between. I said I've set this about an hour 20. Probably took me about 10 minutes to do the quick sketch on there. I probably spent 10 minutes pre-mixing the paints on there because it's fairly easy to do that. And because I'm not having to actually color match to anything. I'm not looking at someone's eyes. I'm not looking at the color of the dress. I'm not looking at their hair. It's just me just making it up. So that's why that was pretty quick. The advantage of having it pre-mixed, though, and I must confess to you guys that this is what YouTube is causing me to do because I want to show you a really good way of doing it, a nice, simple way. It's actually forcing me to go back to some basics. And so pre-mixing like this speeds the painting up. So one is a challenge to how many values can I mix and can I get, matching values but different colors. And it's kind of a bit of a game you can play with yourself. But then when it's all said and done and you get to the good fun, the meat and potatoes, paint this painting, it's laid out for you. And that's what I think makes painting so enjoyable for me is I'm not really worried about color anymore. Now I can start to be creative with my color because now I can go that value and that value or that color and that color. Why don't I cross-pollinate them here, for the lack of a better word, and mix them together and see what I can create and see the shapes that I can do. So that pre-mixing is absolutely fantastic. It just opens you. It opens up the creativity for you. So you can actually pre-mix. Now you can think about the painting, and now you can think about the painting and only the painting. It frees you then to go, why don't I just put that there? And what would happen if I did this? So it allows your creativity and artist to come forward without being hampered doing, the basic grunt work at the start, which is the color mixing. So do the sketch, do the color mixing, and away you go. I did ask a question by a client of mine, and he was saying about commissions. He's saying, how do you get your commissions? How does that actually work? And I think it's just understanding what a client wants. I mean, I paint heirloom portraits. So mine are for generationals, to pass down for generations. So it's always to try and tell a story about the person you're painting, doing the painting of, so that the generations to come will look at it and get to understand the type of person that was, their ancestor was. So that's what I'm doing there. And I think you hear me quite often say, and this is what I say to people. So really, it's a value proposition. It's more, it's not about price. I was talking to a friend today, and they said, "Well, how do you handle price if someone says it's too expensive?" And I borrow a line from one of the luxury sales academies that teach this kind of stuff. And it's a simple line: is, "Look, I'm not expensive. My paintings aren't expensive. Just some people can't afford them." It's as simple as that. It sets you on a standard. It stops you making excuses and stops you having to defend your price. But I spent so many hours. It took me 6 years. Of this. I went to TAFE. I went to Artelic. My brushes cut. No, don't do any of that. Just the simple answer is, I'm not expensive. Just some people can't afford my paintings. That's it. No defense. No justification. That's it. And I always use nice round pricing for my paintings. There's never, it's $297 or $2,999. Just round it. It's a $3,000 painting. I'm sorry, but it's $3,000. A 76 by 76. What are we in 2026 at the moment? Here we go, all the 60s. That for me in a couple's painting is 6,200 in Australian. I don't justify it. That's just what it is. And it's a good price and it's good value. And what I like to do in the commissions is I like to go and visit the person. I like to get to know them. I want to know their story. What is that ingredients that they're really looking to convey through their painting? The couple, the 70 couple, and they didn't look 70, by the way. I will confess, I got in the car and went, "There's no way they're 70. They're pulling my leg." Because they look absolutely fantastic for 70. I tell you, I hope I look that good at 70. But we talked about, and they're talking about the generations, talking about the grandkids that are playing in the garden. So we actually did some photographic work in the garden with the flowers, the greenery and the flowers behind. Not my typical scene, but by having that, and we paint a little bit of the picket fence going in there, that when the grandkids look, "Oh, I remember that's Nanny and Pops or Grandma and Grandad's, whatever they call them, that's their backyard. Oh, that's that fence. I remember the fence. Oh, I remember the white flowers that used to grow. That was her pride and joy. And there's that little wall." And so there's things in there that will remind them of the history of, these people. And then the other thing they did say to me is they are very happy people, and they're very, very happy people. So I don't like family cheesy grin paintings, as you know, but you have to respect the client. So then it's a matter of going, so how do I connect you to, how do I show the love, and how do I show the smiling face? And that's why I like to spend that time and get to understand those elements. And then when you go away, when you do your photographic shoot and you come back, you can then design the painting that's going to incorporate the elements that your client wants incorporated. And then when you go and deliver, so what I normally do when I finish a painting, I'll take my easel, display easel, set it up in their room, and then we'll have it covered. They'll invite some friends and family. We'll have a couple of drinkies and a couple of nibblies, and I'll unveil it to the group. And everyone's all nice and complimentary. People ask me as the artist different questions, how I did that, what was I thinking there. And I always give them in front of everyone. They get their letter of authenticity, and they get their insurance valuation letter. And I'll normally type them a personal letter from myself and the artist's take on it. So I'll have a bit of a, what I see in the painting, why I included elements to the painting. And it's a bit of an artist's insight into what I was thinking when I was doing. And I show them videos along the way as well, and pictures along the way of me painting. But that's what I do. Invariably, because I do it that way, and they've got a story behind the painting, it actually gives the painting even more depth than just what they're looking at, because now I'm describing it from, an artist's perspective. As you would as an artist, you describe it in different ways. You've included the branch overhead showing the shelter. You've included the picket fence because that represents the grounding and the home, the flowers blossoming, the new blooms coming through, so showing that love is still coming through. All those things, the golden rays of the sun in one, all those little, and you write that up and you describe it, why you put those elements in, even if they're not actually in any of the photographs. Like the photograph, I don't think there was any new buds being formed, but I threw a few in because that's what I want to convey. That love is ever growing, it's ever blooming, and then I talked about how I've got her head resting on him, I've got the hand resting on his chest, and why I did that to show that love and that connection between themselves. So I write the artist description like that. They can read that. They will actually share that with their family and friends and say, oh, look, this is why he did this. They then can talk about the piece in a lot more detail than just, it's a portrait of me and my wife, or me and my husband, or me and my girlfriend, or me and my boyfriend, whatever it is. It gives them more depth to talk about. And that causes other people to connect with the painting at a deeper level. And it's that causes them to say, I should get a portrait done too. And that leads me on to continually getting work without advertising. So that's how I do it. And I did it with a friend of mine who was, and I'm sorry I'm not talking about the painting, but you can watch what I'm doing. I've just worked my way through, and you see how those dabbing motions. The reason I'm doing dabbing, by the way, I'm trying to pull the paint up off the picture because this is a very textural wall I want to get. So as I'm putting in, I'm pushing and pulling and twisting and turning, and I've switched the brushes to, that's a number 5 filbert. And by the way, these are my cheap brushes. These are the ones I bought online. I can't remember where from now, just to prove a point. It's not the brush that's going to do it. It's going to be the values. I don't skimp on the paints. I use Winsor & Newton, professional grade. That's you shouldn't skimp on your paints because their pigments are a lot stronger. They go a lot further anyway, and doesn't cost any more in the long run because they just last longer. But yeah, that's what I'm doing there. So yeah, so that's how I get the work. So I had a friend who was a landscape artist. And this might interest you, and he's saying, look, you're lucky because you do commissions, and I see how you've done your commissions, and you're getting regular work, and you're having all this fun, you're earning this money. He said, but, I hang my pictures, I go to the markets, I do this. And I said, look, this is something to understand about clients. And we're all the same, me and you, everyone, we're all the same, right? We can go to the shop and we can buy a picture at the shop. It's just a piece of decorative art. We'll just hang it up, we can buy a vase at the shop, whatever it is. Or we can go to an art gallery, which is a bit more prestigious. We're a bit more at market. We now know who's made the piece, whether it's a painting, whether it's a blown glass, or whether it's a turned piece of pottery. We now know a little bit about the artist. We feel a bit more connected to that piece, don't we? Because now we've upped the value. And I'm not talking the price. I mean, the price goes up, but I'm not talking about the price. I'm talking about the value to us. But when you get a commission piece and someone commissions a piece, well, now you're falling into a very exclusive class of people. Not many people, in the scheme of things, get commission pieces of artwork done. They just don't. So now the person buying it is a little bit more sophisticated. They're getting something very, very personal. Now it's not just a random piece of art. It's not just a picture they loved or an artist they seem to like, so they got a piece of his work. Now this is an artist that they enjoy their style of their painting, but now this has been done for them personally. Now that is very exclusive. That pushes the value of that piece, and we're not talking money, we're talking the value, the emotional value of that piece, to a whole new level. It also becomes, as I call mine, heirloom portraits, and that's the style that I'm doing them in. That's what I'm always thinking of. For generations, that becomes a really valuable piece of family history. So he was a landscape artist, and he was struggling and saying, well, you can do it because you do portraits. I said, well, you've got a lot of farmers where you are, and there's beautiful countryside in New Zealand. I said, why don't you just go, say what you do, ask a farmer you can paint a portrait, a landscape portrait of his, or landscape, I'm back onto my language, a landscape of a piece of his farm that he really loves the view. And the first farm, it was a river going through. It had this big old tree, and I don't know what type of tree it was. And cow was down there, and I think the cow was actually in the field somewhere else, but the farmer happened to mention, oh, that's, Daisy or whatever, Daisy the cow. And he said, oh, and he said, oh, he'll come down. So all these pictures are taken. It's actually a photograph of the cow grazing grass, and the artist just flicked it around and put the cow by the river, by this little creek, Curly Creek, and the tree. And he painted that scene. Now, I can't remember the size. It was probably a 20-inch by 30-inch. So we're not talking massive. And he put it in a floater frame. And then he said to the farmer, look, when I present this and uncover it, can you invite a few of your farmer friends? We'll do an uncovering. We'll show them what we've done. It'll be really exciting, really special. And they did. And I think they put a sausage sizzle on or something like that. And they had a couple of champagne oranges going around. And it was really cheap. I mean, as I said, a gallery will take 50% of your money if you put paintings in galleries. So you can afford to spend a little bit of your hard-earned on, putting on something for your client. And the people that came, when they unveiled it and said, this is his farm and the story of the farm, and the farmer talked about why that was his favorite piece on the property, and it meant so much. And, oh, there's Daisy, my cow, and had a laugh and a giggle. Look, even Daisy makes a starring role in there, and rah, rah. And it became a real talk fest. At the end, he had other farmers coming to him saying, you know what, I'd like to get a painting like that of my place. I've got my sheep on there. I've got this old rainwater tank that my grandpa, put up when we first got the farm. All these stories came out. And now, as a landscape artist, he's a commissioned landscape artist. No, he's doing farmers. Now, there is nothing stopping you looking for that angle in whatever it is. It's same with still lifes. I've seen people with still lifes do, they've painted the old lamp that there's been handed back from generations, put a little bit of jewelry on there that came from great Aunt Maggie, whatever. And that they paint commission work. They don't just paint still lifes. They actually paint a piece that have real value, really emotional value to their client. So that is the strategy. Just because I'm a portrait artist and you might like painting portraits, but you might also like painting landscapes. You might be, I really do like still lifes. I like watching your portraits, but Michael, still lifes, I love them. And we're going to do a couple of still lifes, actually, just to show you, my technique for transposing portrait techniques to landscapes. So it's a way of really turning yourself from a hobby to a business really, really quickly. And there's a couple of steps along the way, how to get your first client and stuff like that. But you can do things for free for people as long as they can, have a bit of a party and show it off. You'll get you will get work off that. I'm talking about how this is portrait technique. So the reason we're using broken color on here, let's get back to the painting, is this is how I do foreheads. All right, I don't use green. Well, sometimes I do. And sometimes you will as well. But what I mean by broken color is that in a forehead, rather than, you have a look at somebody's forehead and the cheeks are the same, and you get a massive, I think what makes them complicated for people is such a massive variation of shade differences. But if you look at someone's forehead, there are color differences. Now, initially we don't see it because, a red might be next to, a brown, or a blue will be next to that. But because they're the same value and they've been put next to each other, they blend and they merge. And I think that's what some people get confused. How the heck am I going to paint this forehead? It looks really, really complicated. But if we broke it down just to purely values and say, right, find me the darkest, and you'll go around and say, well, these the reddy browns, that's the darkest. Oh, but this one's dark as well, but it looks like it's got a bluey tinge to it. Okay, that's another row of colors. Then you can start with the darkest blue and work your way to lightest blues. And if you put the values next to each other, as we did on the palette, as I was talking about, you'll have this mass palette just for a forehead that you can now work from darks to lighting. Oh, there's my dark reds. Oh, there's a dark blue sitting next to that, and dab a bit of that in and all of a sudden, a really simple technique like what we're doing on this wall applied to somebody's forehead livens it right up. Now, this wall is a bit more chunky because obviously a wall, it's not someone's forehead. But all you're really doing is making it less chunky, And by that I mean not as large an area covered as some of these spots. You'll see some of it. Look at the size of that red spot, for instance. I'll take that. That's pretty easy. And the light green next to it. You just make them a lot smaller. You know, that piece that I'm just putting in there is probably max where it is now for a forehead. And I would stop and start putting other colors next to it, around it, or other values around it. So all you're doing by being not as chunky, what I mean is you're reducing the area size that you'll cover with a particular value before you'll switch to either a new value or a different color of that value. So by painting the wall, you just get to do it a little bit looser, less strict. No one knows what your wall looks like. No one's going to run around and go, oh, I know where you took that photo, Michael. You know, I know where you saw that image, and you know, I took a picture myself and I put them side by side. It just doesn't happen. A photo is different because their wife, their girlfriend, their boyfriend are standing right next to them. They go, that does not look like them. So that's a different challenge. But something like this is a lot of fun. And I say, making it up a lot. I found this quite challenging actually, because I'm got so used to now working from a photograph on the computer screen, having something to look at and go, oh yeah, I can see that. Going back to how you know, this kind of just free painting, while this might be very easy for some people, this actually caused me some challenges because now my brain's in overdrive going, okay, where am I going to put this? And I'm trying to visualize the wall in my mind, open my eyes slightly and see that vision onto the canvas, and then go, okay, I need to put that there. I need to put this there. And yeah, so this was a little bit challenging. You see, I'm just dabbing the top edge there. I'm trying to cover all the edges. But all I'm doing is doing the value shifts, and you see I just muck around with those values now. And see as I just push them in, and I'm not really trying to blend. Any blending that happens is just purely accidental. I'm not getting a big fan brush or, you know, painter's brushing on. You see some people, they'll blend that out and make it super, super smooth because that's their style. It's certainly not my style. These paintings look totally different in real life than what they do on camera, by the way. The camera doesn't quite capture the color like I'd like it to, but that's my issue because I don't have the best camera in the world, or maybe I've not got the lighting right. But it's not really the colors that we're after. What I'm trying to show you is just the value shift. By the way, that dark piece, if you look on his right-hand shoulder, there's that angled line there. That's just a shadow. So I've basically just blocked it in, kept it pretty simple. And once he goes in, this is it looks a bit strange at the moment, but once you get the figure in and experience teaches you it, all this will all start to make sense. So I'm just working with number 5 filbert, just pushing and pulling, and I'm just letting the bristles do the mixing for me. I don't want to go over the top and, you know, blendy blend and make it super, super smooth. I'd rather just, if paint goes into it and mucks it up a bit, that is great. And this freestyle that you're doing is really, really beneficial. So yeah, we're motoring along here, aren't we? We've probably done just over half an hour at this stage. I'm into those browns. You see the different values there, and I'm mixing 2 of the values together. And this is really important to remember. Just because you've got those values, you can actually mix those values together, which will give you new values. And you'll see me mix some values of one color with the same value of another color, and that will give me something totally different again. You know, there's no rules on this. And what I do there is a technique of just blending on the canvas. I'll pick up some dark of that color on my brush. Then I'll pick up some light. I won't mix it, so I didn't mix it on the palette. I just actually scoop some on my brush, and that way when I start pushing it onto the canvas, it doesn't mix properly. So it doesn't mix into one solid color. And sometimes you look at a painting and go, how did he paint so much detail in that? Look at all the different and that's all they've done. They've just grabbed 2, maybe sometimes 3 values, different colors of the same value, haven't mixed them on the brush, to scoot them up on the brush, and then painted them into the canvas so that the 2 colors semi-mix and the 2 values semi-mix, and it gives you that really broken effect. I really like it, and I do use that a lot when I paint foreheads and I paint cheeks. I'll pick up 2 colors that I want and then paint that into the actual portrait itself. So all this is just really good practice. So I said, if you like this, please put some comments underneath. I'll be reading them all and commenting on them all. Thank you very much. And I really do hope you're enjoying this one. It's a little bit different. And it's probably long, but I wanted to show you every single brushstroke that I did and exactly how I'm bouncing from palette to canvas, just so you can paint along, just so it can just be something different. If you like these, just let me know down below. And I was saying when it's done, so we'll finish this off next week. We'll get to stage 1 this week. Then next week we will finish it off. It will dry. I will varnish it and let that dry. I'll use a Gamma varnish over the top of it. I'll pop that into a floater frame, and it's going to be in a black floater frame, this one. And then I will post it to someone absolutely free. I'll pay the postage. Don't worry about that. And I'll post it to one of my subscribers. And that's just my huge thank you for reaching 500 subscribers. It's like, woohoo! Probably a really tiny channel as YouTube standards, but hey, I don't care. It's a milestone, and I just wanted to do something just to say thank you, because it really, your support and everything you've done is really, really appreciated on that. So as you can see, painting along that, and now I'm starting to bounce from colors to colors, to values to values. So I'm not following it in the strictest form, and that's probably because rather than if I was working from an actual image, I would be probably a lot stricter. I'd be getting all my darks covered over that canvas. Then I'd be going all my midtones. And I always do 3 darks, 3 midtones, 3 lights. That's normally my standard of what I like to do. I would be a lot stricter, but because it's from my head and I'm thinking about it as we're going, it's causing me to like look at a piece on the canvas and go, what do I want there? What do I think would work there? And so the decision-making process is actually leading to not being as strict in the following of darks to light as I would normally do. That whole thing would be covered in darks before I'd even consider putting anything like this on. But working from my mind, hey, and some people work exactly like we're working now, even when they're working from a photograph or an image, you know, a piece of reference material. But some people start top left and go right down to bottom right. Some people work top to bottom. Some people work back to front. It's interesting how different artists work. I don't think there's a right or a wrong. It's only if it's right for you and it feels good for you. That's the only thing. The great thing about filberts, as you can see, I can cut it on its edge here. And look, I'm not the best drawer in the world. I don't claim to be. But even with this filbert, I can just cut around the top of his cap there and then just come back around. I don't have to be too fussy. And this is the part where you might put something in and be saying to yourself, oh, I need to do something that just don't fiddle too much. Just keep moving on. Get everything down first before you do any fiddling. We don't want to do any fiddling until the doors are in, till the cobble street's in, until he's in. Once that is done, then we can have a bit of a fiddle around. And if we don't like something or something looks a bit off, we will get a lot better picture. Having said that, I have been guilty of fiddling. I think every artist does. You'll just look at something and go, oh, that's driving me nuts. And you'll just go and do something about it there and then. You really shouldn't, but hey, we're all just human. And that's what we do. If you want to know anything about painting, or how I do this kind of stuff, what I'm actually thinking about, or any advice on painting, maybe you want to become a professional artist, maybe you just want to become a better portrait artist, maybe you're just already a great portrait artist and you see something and say, look, I'm pretty good at portraits. What is it you're actually doing? Because I think that's the thing, isn't it? As an artist, we never stop learning. I do stuff and I'm watching other people and some of the great masters, and I just go, wow, I really love how they do that. I want to have a crack at that myself. Let me try that on mine. They're never going to do it exactly the same as the artist who does it, because you're you, and I'm me. We're never going to be exactly the same as the other person. Our fingerprints, as I call them, our brush strokes, are never going to be the same as somebody else. So we don't have to stress about that. It's just learning from other people and going, I like how they did that. Let's see if I can do that too. And you'll do it in your own way. You develop your own style around it. So it's just that learning process that's going on. And you see, I'm just taking my time there now because I do want to come along this figure. And as we get this covered, you do see the man start to pop out. Now, here's a fiddle. There's Michael guilty doing something he said don't do. I saw that really dark patch there, and it was driving me nuts as I was coming down on his body here. And I'm going, oh, I can't stand it. So I knew I was being filmed, and I knew someone's going up, look, he's fiddling. You just can't take yourself too seriously, can you? So yeah, so there you go. I didn't like it. I'm coming over the top of it, and yeah, no excuses. So don't beat yourself up too much. Just try not to do it. Try and go. It's an exception to the rule. You shouldn't really do it, but occasionally you are going to do it. So these types of paintings, these are really, really good fun. And normally when I do these types of things, I do them for my wife when we do still lifes and she puts them around the house. But I do have clients that do like these pieces that actually speak to them. And I've done a few different types of paintings, whether they're figure paintings like this or still lifes. And they do really, really well. People really like them. Normally people who have busy lives like quieter pieces. People who have quieter lives like a little bit more busier pieces. I've seen people love racehorses, and in actual full flight, they love it. They can feel the adrenaline there. And I've seen those paintings, and and then I go, wow, they're great. Not what I would paint, and I think that's something you can admit to yourself. It's not what you would paint, but you can still admire it for what it is and understand that the person who's buying it is buying it for that reason. So for me, when I do these types of paintings, I normally do sell them. Well, they're normally gone before I've finished them. So a painting, just someone asks, how much would something like this cost? So this one here, I mean, this is very, very simple. This would be about 16, and just have a look at my prices, 1,600 for something like that. Framed and ready to go. I do like to pop a little frame on this size painting. I think it just adds a little bit. I don't want them running off to framers. They can if they want to, but I'd rather them just get it and better hang it. It's not a personal item. They're not going to, and that means it's not about them personally, so they're not having to choose a frame. So I do tend to frame. I normally put them in a floater frame or a shadow box frame, whatever you want to call it. Floater frame, I think, is what most people call them these days. And this one will go in a black one. And you'll better see that when I've finished it. So you'll see how I finish these paintings off. So I've just have slowed down here, and that is probably just my brain going, I'm a little bit stuck on what to do down here on this part of the wall. Because I think my brain's going, I want this part of the wall to look a little bit different than the top part of the wall. How am I, and that way it gives something either side of the figure. So I'm probably questioning myself at this stage, how am I going to tackle that? And, the stone benches, I've got to be conscious of the stone bench as well. So I can't come too light as I come down, but I've got to make it light in the other side, or the shadow will look out odd. But then the question is, obviously, I'm asking myself as well, if I come down, I come too light, then how light do I have to make the bench to make the bench stand out? And of course, I don't want to be in the whites. We can't go white. I've got to keep it light. So I'm constantly thinking that. I'm also constantly thinking that this is a quiet scene, but it's still got a lot of movement in it, a lot of interest in it. It's not just painting a blank wall and a man sitting there. We can create a lot of emotional depth, even though it is a quiet painting. So they're the questions that are going through my mind at the moment. I'm adding in the right direction. Is this finishing off correctly? Because there's no reference material. I'm just doing it out of my head. And I think when you paint out of your head, you'll suddenly go, no. Yeah, now I understand what he meant. I had this idea, and now I'm questioning as I'm doing it. And it does slow down the painting process a little bit, but that's fine. We're just thinking, and that is a danger. So what I just did then, there's 3 dots in a row, not random at all. And I'll have to just come in and just fix that, because that is terrible. Not random at all. And your brain loves to make patterns out of things. It's a shocking device for an artist. It really does. So that's one of the dangers. And as you recognize a pattern forming, destroy it straight away. That is one of my rules. I won't even leave that. That'll just be there. If I see a pattern formed, I want to go in and destroy that pattern straight away, because you don't want that left on your painting. And you see I'm moving across into the blues and bringing the blues, but the same value of what is already on the wall. And as I come across now, I'll darken that value, but I've already got a lighter value just above it. So your eyes, it might be a bit hard to see on the screen, it's not disjointed, and because there's blues in those greens and because there's reds in those greens, everything's starting to work in harmony. Now you see I'll go right into the darkest blue, which isn't dark as compared to my darkest greens that I've got on there, but they are now dark, and it's going to allow me to start forming the wall and forming some more character. And it's almost going to create a transition from the wall to the door. So rather than just paint this green and red and model and take it all the way up to the door, I want to create a little bit of drama, a little bit more interest in there. And I'll do that by switching to the blues. And you'll see as I come across now, it will start to look a little bit different. And we've probably got, just so you know, we've probably got half an hour of painting left to go. So this is about an hour 20 to paint the first stage. If I was painting this, in one sitting, in one morning, it's probably a 3-hour painting at the max, 2.5 to 3 hours. What I'm going to do when this is finished, is I'm going to clean this palette off, and I'm going to mix the colors for that door. I'm going to mix the colors for the cobbles. And then we're going to paint that, and then I'll actually splice the video for you, but I'll actually mix the colors for the man and then paint him in last. We'll save him for the piece of the resistance, as they say. So now I need to get this column in here, and obviously it's going to be in shade, so they put it in shade because it looks like it's angling back against the wall. So it's actually sitting slightly proud of the wall. So I'll just run some darks up there, and you can see using the edge of that filbert, you can get a good line, and your lines don't have to be perfect. I mean, you're not an architectural draftsman. You don't have to get out their rulers, and I've seen people do that, and they do buildings, and they'll do that, and they're so crisp and sharp. It's absolutely incredible. But you really don't have to. There's paintings out there, of snooker tables, billiard tables, and when you actually zoom in your eyes and pull it right up, you go, the billiard balls aren't even round. They just put some shades on here and left it. And you would go, a 2-year-old could paint better. And then you realize it's been painted by one of the masters. And the reason it works is as soon as you step back, your eyes actually don't see it. You have a look at a Sargent, a John Singer Sargent painting, and going on some of the glassware and some of the silverware, and see how rough, or we would say rough, the brushwork is when you zoom right in. But as you step back, it all just works. Your eyes fix all the mistakes. It all blends together. And just this craftsmanship of using the colors and the values, it is something that I saw over and over and over. Now, I'm nowhere near that standard, or am I brave enough to do some of the stuff these guys are doing? And I guess that's why they're masters and I'm not. But yeah, and the danger is sometimes also, as a commissioned artist, some of your clients won't accept that rough work. They don't like it. They go, no, it's a little bit too edgy. I want it. I don't need it to be photorealism, but I would like to have it a little bit better than that. I mean, they're the words they use. I'm thinking, this is a John Singer Sargent, he's incredible. But hey, that people think different things, hey? And that's just the way it is. So your painting has always got to go, if you're doing work for other people, is always go for the other person. So this is probably the loosest and probably the roughest that I wouldn't normally paint. And you see my portrait paintings, I'd certainly never be this casual painting them, but that's when the portrait has actually got to look like the person. But there's nothing wrong with it. I've seen some brilliant artists, some brilliant portrait artists, and the stuff they get away with because of their skill in laying values in the right spot is absolutely incredible. And you can really play with that. And this is one of those exercises, as well as this is going to be a fun painting for you to have and hang up in your home if you paint along with me. this is one of those fun exercises that really allow you to push yourself and push the limits and experiment with absolutely no fear. I mean, what's the worst going to happen? You don't like it and you put it in the bin, or paint back over it and paint something else. I mean, not really a lot's going to happen with this. But you will be surprised. You may be looking at it and see all the faults, and I think Mark Carter coined the phrase artist curse. Lots of other artists talk about this as well, because you're just seeing exactly how you did it. So it kind of doesn't have the same magic. The only way you're actually going to tell whether it is a good painting, the only real reason or real test, is to show somebody else, a trusted person. Just go, look, I've just finished this piece, and just let them have a look at it and listen to their comments. And if they're honest, they'll either pick fault with it or they'll start telling you everything they love about it. And quite often they just tell you everything they love about it, and they don't even see the stuff that you've been doing because they weren't there when it was happening. They just see the painting as a whole finished product, which is totally different than you seeing it in pieces. And this is one of the things when you watch this, it's in pieces. That's why I showed you right at the beginning what it's going to look like at the end, or the end of this session. But when you see what the painting is going to look like in the next session, at the end of the next session, you'll be going, it looks different. There's something different about it. And all it is more pieces on there for your brain to lock onto to make sense of the whole thing. And your eyes will fix it. So here we go. You can see here that I'm actually grabbing a couple of different values together and just placing them on. And I'm not being too careful or too gentle. And there you are. I'm moving around the board because I know that I stay in one area for too long. It's not going to work for me. It's going to turn out to be just a big splodgy mess. So we'll just work down there. I'll just grab a drink, guys, for this dry throat of mine. God, talking for an hour and a half. Oh, jeez. I don't normally talk this long. Just one moment. There we go. That's better. So you can see now the values as they're coming in. I'm just mixing the different values together there and just pushing them in. And that, as I said, that's exactly my forehead and my cheek technique coming in. It's exactly how I would paint them. And by being able to put these different values together, I really do get the variation. So now you can see what I said about a break from the main wall to the door. By having this dramatic, and it is dramatic shift, it doesn't look that dramatic actually, but it's gone straight to the blues. There's a bit of greens in here obviously, but it's going straight to the blues. And you can certainly see there's a shift in the wall. And it's to tell the story. There's a shift in the wall from here to the door. But notice I didn't push the shift all the way down to the bottom. It's just from basically, 3/4 up that I've done this shift. It just, in a quiet setting, just because it's quiet doesn't mean the painting has to be quiet. It's almost a contradiction, isn't it? But if you had a look at the noise going in the background there's a lot actually happening. So it's kind of a noisy background with a quiet contemplative figure. So always think about that when you want to do stuff. If you want to paint a nice, quiet, contemplative figure, can you make it a noisy background like I'm doing here? If it was a noisy foreground, for instance, galloping horses or something with a lot of action, I'd probably quieten the background down. So we get that opposite effect. A quiet background is going to make the noise at the front stand right out. A noisy background is going to make the quietness at the front stand out. And these are just some of the things you're constantly thinking of as an artist and going, how do I tell this story better? How do I emphasize the fact that he's reflecting on his life? How do I emphasize this quietness that he's got about him? And this is one of the techniques to do that. Noisy background, quiet foreground, or a quiet image in this case as we're painting this. And it's something I'll do with the doors. I won't put a lot of character into the doors. We'll make them interesting. But we'll put a couple of door furniture on there, darker coloured door furniture, maybe a door knocker on there. And we'll just see how that looks and whether we want to keep that. But it's really something that they can have a look at, ask the question, is he come through that door? Is he going to go through that door? But the doors will make the reds in the walls pop, so that'll give us our color harmony going on and our localized color effect that we want to get there. And will add another bit of drama to an otherwise quiet and undramatic piece. So that's why we're going to do it, and that's some of the think of this. So they're just some of the things that you think of. And look at this wall. We've almost got this wall done now. We're getting probably to our lightest shade here, and we're just going to put some marks. And you'll notice that as I do this, I'll probably put some other marks around it. And I'm just doing that little flicking technique. And I want to bring it over there. See, I just don't want it all in one spot. So I just went and just dabbed a piece over the other side. So the eyes have got something that says, yeah, it actually does belong there. It's not just this blob and it suddenly appeared out of nowhere. And at the end, when we have a look at this, when we cover the whole canvas, we might have a look. We might put a little bit more blues. We might put a few more darks in there. Normally, I'm adding more darks when I've just painted it like this. I tend to sometimes find that when I sit back and look, it's too quiet, the background with all the light. So I'll add some more darks, add some drama. But we won't do any of that until we actually have got the thing finished. So we've hit the 1 hour mark. And we have, well, basically 1 hour, and we've finished our wall. And just a few more little dabs on there, and there we go. That's going to be about the wall now. And we can just say, great. And there's that blue going in. I know what I want to do. That's just from knowledge. Just make sure you put some dabs in the other places. And there you see I'm wearing my headset, listening to my music as I paint along. And now I'll do exactly the same. As I put the blues into the wall, I'll bring some of that reds and I'll put it into the blues. So there's a joining of them in a sort. So I think they call it color harmony or local color. They localize it. So they take color from one, put it in another. And now I've got the filbert back on its edge, and we will work on this stone bench. Now, this is a stone bench, so it's not even, it's not smooth. It doesn't have to have straight lines. So people who say to me, I can't paint a straight line to save myself, absolutely fantastic. You're at a great advantage over the rest of us because this stone bench doesn't require straight lines. In fact, a straight line on that bench would look absolutely terrible. There you go. I took a light and a dark on the brush so I could get something different. And really, I just put it in there and have a look at it. And I suppose experience tells you, and I know that it's a bit darker and always put some more lights over it as well. So the bench is there. It doesn't have to be a perfect bench. I say you look at some of the old masters' photos and of their work, and you'll start to notice where the important things are spent some time on and where the unimportant things, they just roughly just almost dashed in. And I think that's what gives them their freshness. You know, they just dash these things in and they look absolutely fantastic. There we go. And I'm just mixing up some more darks because I know just sitting under that bench, it's going to be a darker area. But I've got 3 values of darks there, as you know. So by doing 3 values of darks, I'm actually giving life inside inside those shadows. So shadows aren't just one black blob. They're actually coming out. And there's actually movement and light and color inside those shadow areas. And as we work now, we're going to get that figure that we've got there. He's going to start to cut out even more. The cutout of him is going to really start to stand out. And we're going to get a really clear vision of whether we think we've got this looking correct. Because maybe just a pencil sketch is actually going to look different than the actual painting. So it's only when I start to get to this stage now, and I'm just telling you how it is that right now, you know, even though I've sketched it, you can do the best sketching in the world. But until you start putting the paint on and you start getting pieces of this painting completed, you never really know whether this figure is going to fully work for you or not. You know, are those trousers going to look realistic? Have I got him in the right spot? He's sitting slightly to the left of the canvas where I want him. I've got the doors on the right. He's looking like he's in the right spot. If I look at the top part with his cap and his beard sitting up there, I do feel like I've got him correct on this one. And if I didn't, I'd move him. And you'll see that even Sargent's paintings, his classic, you'll quite often see where you can actually look at a silk dress and go, there used to be a brooch there. I can see the shadow underneath, where he's overpainted and he's moved a brooch or he's moved a medal or he's moved something. Very, very common. So even the greats will paint it and stand back and go, don't like it, needs to move for it just to give me what I want it to give me. And they're not frightened to move stuff, and neither should you. So yeah, right now as I'm painting this, I am asking myself that question, is this figure in the right spot? And I'm probably not going to get the definitive answer in my head until I do the inside of those legs, the dark area, the inside of the legs. I get the other side of the bench on, and the dark part of the inside of the legs there, the shadow in the legs, and that'll show me how the figure is actually sitting, and it will show me how it's actually sitting on that canvas and whether I truly like how I've now got in position and angled and all of that. So even at this stage, I'm still waiting until that bench is completely figured. And moving him is simple. It's only paint. You can just move him along, not a problem. Scratch out a new position and away you go. So there we go. I'm just putting in those shadows. And if you have a look, hopefully you can see it on the camera. Those shadows are just not one color. They're just not one color. There's a variety of colors going on in there. And we'll just keep moving on to our lights. And this is one of the things that I love about paintings. As they start to get to this stage, you start to see things and start to really enjoy the process. The whole thing starts to come to life. Trust me, right now, I actually want to paint the figurine. I want to paint him. Part of me is going, come on, hurry up, finish that bench. Don't worry about the door. Don't worry about the cobbled street. Just paint him. I want to see what he looks like. I think it's just human nature, or maybe it's just me. But that's what I'm really looking at. And now I'll just draw in the front of this bench because it's got a nice light area on it. And see how rough that is, because the bench is rough. But these filberts do a great job. Just the edge of that filbert really does well. And then we'll try and cut in the other side. So I'm looking at both sides of the bench now and going, okay, that's about where that line goes. Doesn't have to be perfectly straight. And we'll start putting in some lights. And I would normally get all the darks in. But my brain, because it's trying to work it out now, it's trying to follow a line and see it. Now I can see because there's paint on there. My brain is actually trying to go, okay, is that the straight line? Does that look correct? Is that the right value there? This side of the bench needs to be a lot lighter than the other side because it is in light. Am I happy with how this is forming? Am I cutting it in properly? How about those crack lines there? And all those questions are now going through my head. And I'm even looking at this far side. We haven't finished the edge there. So it's very important that edge sits on the right angle, or the whole thing's going to look silly, and that's where I start to cut in those edges. You see I'm working the brush backwards and forwards, and I'm looking what the angle is on the other side and asking myself, does this look right? Does this look right? Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not after photorealism. I just that when you stand back and you look at it from a distance, I want it to look correct. So your eyes are tricked and you go, yep, that is a real bench. That's what a real stone bench. It is a stone bench. And you recognize it for what it is rather than trying to analyze it photoanalytically, if that is a word. So it is a challenge because the painter, you're trying to get it to a certain level that you wanted to get it to. And sometimes you don't have to get it to that level. It's just the way it is. There's my headsets, my little Sonys. I'm actually listening to Spotify. I think I've got a rock and roll mix going on. I quite often listen to music. Someone asked me that one time, what are you doing when you're painting? Do you have music in the room? Do you like it quiet? No, I don't like it quiet. I like music going. Rock and roll, a bit of AC/DC going on there, a bit of Creedence Clearwater. Oh my goodness, showing your age there, Michael. But that's how it is. So I do love the music going on as I'm painting. We've almost got this bench done, and it will just take a couple of little tweaks just to finish it off to a level where you can kind of go, yeah, you got it. But see, now you've got it. This is something just to look at here. Now I've got it can just have a quick bit of model. Oh, there's, I think I jumped for some reason, but there's the black going in between his legs. And that's the bit I was talking about before. This is the bit that I really wanted to get in so I can see whether this painting is actually going to be correct. And now I've done that, I will go across to this pillar on the other side. And this is something just for you. Now, as I creep the pillar up, I see I'm doing vertical brush strokes now because the brick or the concrete pillar, whatever it is, goes in. I want that vertical effect on it. But again, I'm not just using one value. I'm actually going to move the values along, and I'm just finding where that line is there for the pillar. And there's my little stick that I'll swing across. That's just connected up above. It just hooks on to my wall easel there. It just does give me a steadier hand when I'm doing little bits and pieces like this. And I did want to try and get that line reasonably straight. May not be perfect, but reasonably straight is good enough for me. And now you can see the darkness on the side of that wall, and we'll just re-emphasize that in. So we are getting to the end of this painting. Another 10 minutes or so to go, 7 minutes to go, I reckon, on this. And now I'm going to just draw my line down the pillar. Now, I will switch the values as I come down. So I don't want the same value all the way down or all the way at the top. I'm just cutting that top piece again, just around the edge. That's all I'll do there. And I'm really looking for just using the filbert's edge to give it. Now I'm looking, and what I'm doing now is I'm just using that same value, looking down the wall. And that's why I put some marks on that wall, just to tell me, Michael, you've got dark spodges coming down this wall. You've got light areas. Don't just paint the wall in one block color. So all that lines were, it's just to remind us when I go to paint it that I remember what I was thinking when I drew it. So just to remind myself, don't get carried away. Don't just draw this as one color. Mix it up. It is a mottled wall. We don't want it smooth. And you'll notice the right-hand edge as I'm painting isn't perfectly straight. Don't worry about that. Once we put the door in, we can actually use the wet in wet technique, and because we can draw a nice straight line with our door, or straightish line, that will actually get fixed as well. So those scribbles you saw me put on, those little marks that I put on the wall, that was just to remind me as I'm painting, don't forget, don't paint this as one block color. And I think you develop your own style and your own techniques, when you do this kind of thing. What can you do in your initial sketch that'll just remind you when you're doing the painting, oh, don't forget about this here. Oh, yes. I did the same on his cap. I drew his cap and I went, well, I'm going to have a darker shadow here and a bit of a dark shadow above his, where the peak of the cap is. So I just quickly just put him in, not accurately. So when I go to the cap, it goes, what's that? Oh, yes, it's going to put a dark there. So it just helps me as I paint, because you are thinking about a lot of things when you are painting. So the easier you can make it for yourself, the better it is. And that is just leaving yourself those clues along the way so you get reminded of what you're actually thinking about when you originally set off on this journey. And it is a journey. You don't have to follow your drawing verbatim, but it's just a guide. I always say it's a suggested guide more than a rigorous put every single spot where you said it was going to go. Because this is not a portrait, remember. This is just you having some fun, and no one's going to be critiquing against the actual thing that was there. So, and that's all you see me doing now, changing values, going back and filling those gaps with a different value and a different, I think I use a different color. I think I went to the greens, to the blues. I don't know if I put some browns in this. If I haven't, you'll probably find that later on as we get to the end, that will click into my brain and I'll go, oh, it's got the greens, it's got a bit of blue, but we don't have that brown in there, that reddy brown. Let's put a couple of dabs of that in there and we can easily just add that in later. But for now, we're just going to just fill this wall in, remembering that we don't want to go too far with one value, one color. Here comes that blue, that lighter blue. And then we'll just fill that little bit in there. And that starts to give that pillar that old rustic, theme which we want. but there's a lot going on in it. So again, it is the business in the background is contrasting with the quietness in the foreground, and that's all I'm doing. Just using that filbert on its edge, by the way, just to draw that down. If you do have any questions about what we've been doing today, or any suggestions, any opinions, let me know. We're all artists. It's all a community. We all like to learn off each other. Maybe you say, why did you do that? I didn't quite understand why you did it that way. And have you ever thought of doing this, and I do this, and what do you think of that? It's terrific. And if people are painting along, as I said, if you do paint this, hey, share the paintings with me. When we get to the end, wait till you've finished and you're happy, and take a snapshot of it and send it in, and have a look at what you've done. Because I think every single artist is going to have their own style, their own interpretations, and I just love art, and I love the stuff that people do. See, I'm just putting a dark edge down that, just to give the emphasis that is receding backwards. It is standing proud of the wall, so it stands proud of the wall, and the actual doors are inset inside of that. And then what we'll do is we'll just start on this little bit of shadowing of the cobbles. Now, I'm just going to paint this in, but when I come back and actually do the cobbles, you'll see I'll put a couple of darker marks over top, just to emphasize that there's a bit of a ripple of the cobbles going on. And remember, this is a cobbled street I'm painting, so don't have crispy, sharp, straight lines. Cobbles are bumpy and lumpy, so you can just jaggle your lines, and that's why you see those pencil lines are up and down and bumpy, because a cobbled street is a little bit like that. It's not perfectly flat. And we are almost at the end, believe it or not. We're almost at the end of this first session. I think I wore my voice out talking. Oh, dear. I'm a better painter than I am a talker, I think. Some people are going, oh, no. But, yeah, so all I'm trying to do now is just create a difference between the doorstep there and the shadow. So I'm actually going to paint this shadow in, and I told myself, and you see that line going across, that diagonal line, put a shadow in here, Michael, just so it looks like there must be something on the other side of this wall casting a shadow into this particular area. It could be a low wall, it could be a garden wall, it could be anything. That doesn't matter what it is. It's just telling you there's something else happening on here. And rather than just paint the cobbles so they were just all one color or one value, running to the edge of the canvas and running off the canvas, I decided, no, let's put a shadow there. And I think in painting, they call it stops. Quite often you'll hear them say, we're putting a stop there, so the eyes don't fall off. But yeah, to me, it wasn't so much as, and there it is. It's done.
Well, there we go, the end of part number 1. Next time when we come back, we're going to do the doors, we're going to do this cobbled street just in front of him here, and of course, paint our man in as well. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm really excited about getting this one finished, varnishing it, framing it, and posting it to one of you guys as a big thank you for getting me over 500. Now, remember, yours might not look exactly, if you're painting along, it might look exactly like this. That doesn't matter, because all we're doing is just showing how we can use all these modelly colors and using broken color, the same different colors but of the same value, the different shade, same shade, and that's going to work when we paint our portraits. It's really good little learning experience of painting when you're doing portraits later on. But for me, this is just fun, just making it up as we go along. I did a bit of a sketch, not really too sure where colors are going, just putting them in where I felt like it. You do the same thing, and I hope you have lots of fun. Look, if you haven't done it already, I always say, please subscribe, support the channel. We are growing over 500. Wow. See if we can get to 1,000. That'd be amazing. Yes, so please subscribe, write some comments, ask me some questions down below. I love answering them. It's been a real pleasure having your company. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next week when we finish this off. And as I always say, I'll see you on the next one.